Okay. Okay, well, welcome to our discussion session. Welcome, CCF folks. Glad to see you here. And I think, we're looking forward to the conversation. So with that, I think we can just get started with it. Is it green?
You know what?
There you
There we go. Hello, I'm Alex Elmstead. I'm the executive director of the Clayton Community Foundation. And then behind me is sitting the executive members of the board of directors of the Clayton Community Foundation. So I have prepared kind of a deck for us tonight, but I also wanted to just make sure that that I don't talk too much and that there's time for ample discussion on all the different points, but I'm going to go through just kind of a few items. There we go. So the biggest thing that CCF kind of embarked on in 2023 was really our awareness campaign. We celebrated our 15th anniversary in 2023 this year. So it was really defined by kind of a time-bound strategic campaign kind of aimed at increasing awareness and visibility of the foundation and its cause, why it matters, how people can get involved and support CCF. One of the things that I'm always telling folks is that this organization is 15 years old, so it really only has its driver's permit and it's still learning and shaping its identity. And one of the things that we kind of focused on was, hosting salons in people's homes, cultivating the neighbors and the surrounding neighborhoods to kind of, again, draw awareness to the fact of the collective impact over the past 15 years. And then also promoting what we have is our Clayton Neighborhoods videos, which correspond to all the different histories and characteristics of Clayton. We are also able to kind of showcase different completed projects. Some of the things that I always hear from donors is that, oh, this is really great, but the city did. It's like, well, CCF involved in many, many different projects, from Chapman Plaza to a pavilion in Shaw Park to the first mural in Des Moines, to many others. And then we also kind of did really targeted and enhanced and increased advertising and campaigning, not only kind of showcasing through photography and otherwise kind of the assets that we have helped produce. The other thing that we just recently passed at this last board meeting was our fundraising plan. So this correlates to kind of our strategic plan, which was also updated and kind of outdated since it was adopted in 2019. But what this does is kind of project a 3-year period of annual revenues from annual funds to grants to salons to what we call our Clayton Circle giving level of donors, $1,000 and above, corporate gifts and related activities. Again, one of the things that I tell folks is that, CCF receives approximately 5% of Clayton households. So again, only 5% that really accommodates up to about 400 plus donor households. There's approximately 7,500 households total in the city of Clayton. Now, not everybody is philanthropic, so it doesn't mean that they're all giving to charitable causes, but we'd really like to, over the duration of this plan, double that to at least 10% by the end of 2026. And that includes kind of different strategies, such as more of these in-home salons, kind of that one-to-one relationship with the community and with neighbors. That's really where philanthropy and giving exists. So the other piece that I'll go through, but I'm going to pause and allow either CCF board or Board of Aldermen to just kind of stop me and ask questions as I go, is I've kind of divided this into our different 4 pillars. And this is kind of a combination of projects that have been either ongoing for quite a long period of time, or they're in the process of really moving forward and going into their next phases. So public art on Wydown Boulevard. This is really focused on the east end. We already have the Botero sculpture on the west end. CCF Art Committee has met about this frequently on site and public engagement. CCF won a regional arts commission, so regional grant public money to do community engagement work to understand what people don't want at that site, but also doing strategic communications as it pertains to those that live there, the neighborhoods, the churches, the schools, all on the east Wydown Boulevard entrance and kind of gateway from Forest Park into Clayton. And that'll be a new commissioned artwork. And part of the process is not only to develop an RFP for that, to invite artists both locally and internationally to apply, but then also to create maquettes and have community engagement sessions to develop a commissioned piece that is integral to that community and integral to that particular site, which will be, we understand, maybe around Ellenwood and Wydown Boulevard where that turnaround occurs, but that's not necessarily defined yet because we don't know what the proposals are. So it'll be somewhere along that entry point. The other thing that I'll just mention and then I'll pause is the recent seasonal artwork in Chapman Fountain. This was always part of the original design, as I understand, to put a seasonal artwork because that fountain has to be shut off basically starting from November to March. So this allows that part of the fountain to be activated during those winter months with public art. It is kinetic. It does move. I'm working on making it move more with safety kind of factors allowed to it, but this is a site-specific piece, 3rd-degree glass, which is also a vendor of, the art fair and things like that, and then Tralco fabrication to make it specifically for Chapman Plaza. So I'll pause to allow for questions on that.
So it does move, but it's not moving now, right?
It does move. It slightly sways in the wind. There's these little silver armatures in the center that are designed to sway in the wind. And that's a request of the Chapman family specifically, is to have kinetics.
But probably it just wasn't windy that day.
On a more windy day, it's going to move more, but it's a little bit of a safety thing, is that you can't make it move too much. It's structured and sent into the fountain, but that's part of the design of the piece.
And is the light always going to be red?
No, great question. I'm working with Parks on that in terms of just the LED lights. They can be so many different colors. The glass pieces are actually an amber color, and we did that because it relates to the fall and the autumn and things like that. But then it would also allow it to be transparent enough to play off the different LED colors that the lights already have in the fountain.
So it's just not,
It's being programmed to the
yeah.
correct program to make sure that it's.
Okay.
So they're working on that with the lighting company. Yeah, good question.
Alex, since it sounds like the public art on Wydown is something that's, moving forward, did you feel like you guys got a good response rate? There was that survey that went up. Did a lot of people respond and they were interested?
Yeah. So there was over about 150 responses, which is pretty good for actually just a few pop-up signs that we put up and email blasts and things. And we learned, one of the biggest, I'll say this, one of the big key, and I can send it to all the board here. One of the big key takeaways that we learned is not emphasizing the divide between Clayton and the city was a big kind of key takeaway. So not emphasizing that boundary. There were basic things like, make sure that it's stellar piece of artwork and things like that. But another big key takeaway is that it's already dubbed one of the most beautiful streets in America. So obviously you want to be careful about the changes that you create to it so that it should play off and integrate with the kind of park-like aesthetic that already exists. The nature came up a lot.
Yeah, good. I mean, I'm glad you got a good response rate and I'm glad people were positive about it.
Yeah.
Susan, any comments or questions? Side of the room? Okay, continue on.
I'll continue on. So another piece of the artwork discussion is really new loans that have been already really approved by the SLAM Collections Committee. And I've already met with the Public Art Advisory Committee on this. The sites are really to be identified per the Public Art Master Plan, but these are the two works that have been already approved by the Collections Committee at SLAM. This is really to not only partner, we have a work right out front of City Hall. I kind of said in a meeting, I said, well, we have multiple works. So we have one work from SLAM. This allows us to possibly have two more from a great institution. Additionally, it allows us to create more of a pilot run at starting to develop these relationships with these institutions. Things like Lawmeyer. If we can do this right, we can do it properly, we can they'll understand that we can do this process. And they'll show that, we can ask from Lawmeyer and do the same type of thing. And then other institutions that also have public art collections that are sitting in storage and not being utilized. The young Siegfried on the left actually was installed in the Gas Gilbert building of the historic museum. So for a while it was kind of I believe it was both inside and outside the Great Hall. So it's been installed in both locations. So it has an attachment to the museum itself, which is good. And then the Trova, which is an abstract piece, Ernest Trova is from St. Louis himself and has a presence here. And we have a Trova in Clayton. Just happens to be a different type of style with the Silver Man.
Are you gonna get any public engagement about where to place these or how public?
Yeah, I want to. One of the things that I'm trying to do first is make sure that any of the sites identified that SLAM is okay with, because every time I say a site, like I've said, the Sunken Garden, they'll say, well, we don't want to do that because it's kind of too closed off for security reasons, right? That there's possible vandalism and things like that. Sites that I thought were safe, they've said the opposite. So I'm first trying to align it with that. Then I want to make sure that I align it with community interests and community input and things like that. Traffic signal boxes, I know are a discussion point. So I'll just, maybe I'll turn it over to Michelle or David, you tell me.
We can wait till the end for that, or how do we want to?
However you want to do it.
Why don't we move through your presentation?
Okay.
And then we've got this as a discussion point, and I forgot if there's another discussion point that we had identified.
Okay.
Oh, the Ralph Clayton portrait. So let's save those two nuggets for the very end. Let's just get through your
Okay.
presentation.
I'll try to move a little faster because I know it's already 10 till 6:30 here. The historic markers. So we really celebrated two really important African-American identity sites. We not only opened up the Attic School marker on Bonham, which was the second to serve African-Americans before Brown versus Board of Education. And we had a really great turnout from the school. Merrimack came out and celebrated, and then also a former Attic School student who is, I think she's in her 80s now. Dr. Doris also spoke with Cordell and others. So it was a really successful event. And then in partnership with Task Force, a community remembered, and I kind of zoomed out so we can see this incredible location sitting in kind of right front and center of this field of Centene. Off of Carondelet, which recognizes African Americans and their displacement due to rezoning and other policies of the city. So if you haven't seen those two, be sure to visit it. And then that actually relates to the historic Hanley House. Some of the enhancements, we have a lot of these historic homes not have the original slave quarters intact the way that ours are. So it's actually pretty important. And I've been communicating with donors and others to make sure, and parks, to make sure that we are properly enhancing that particular area there, and also commemorating the Jackson family, Lydia Jackson, the original slave of the Hanleys, but also then her daughters and siblings as well, that were enslaved and lived in not only the kitchen and house there. So that will have a historic marker that not only commemorates the Hanley House and the site and things like that, but also recognizes the untold story of the Jackson family. I'll keep going since I'll get through the deck here. Ralph Clayton portrait, that'll be our discussion point. AutoCast app, just to remind everybody that we have this incredible resource that I know our board has talked about kind of updating and getting up to speed, that provides walking tours of both the historic and art places of the city of Clayton. It gets more usage than you might think. And it's when we promote it more, it gets more usage. So that's one thing. And then a lot of these homes and buildings of Clayton are going to start turning a century. So this century plaque program will start being more relevant. This is something that we'll start to fulfill more to make sure that we get these plaques up onto buildings. We've kind of changed the design a little bit, actually, to mimic that of the National Registrar, to just be more language-based. Those that have historic homes don't want a bunch of clutter on their house. They want it to just be recognized in language with the dates and things like that. Remembrance Park, I know that we're getting through some of the weeds of electrical and utility lines and things like that, but that is a project that I'm hoping that we can start to close out, if not this year, by early next year, to start celebrating this. Not only the first green wall, which we have sold every table, we have sold every tree, we have sold everything but the fountain. So that is our next stage with that park, and it continues to happen. A lot of those tables are going to be chess tables, in which the chess club will come with a grand master and teach and engage folks with chess, which is pretty cool. And then the library has agreed to give you Wi-Fi. So it's already a great asset, and it hasn't even been built yet. The splash pad is something that Parks has said we'll have up, so that's using the pre-existing infrastructure of and adjacent to the treetop playground, mimicking the same design, but also elevating it to just the sputters of the water when it was first built, to align with something that matches Clayton's needs, which is a little bit more better. So that'll be up by summer 2024. I also think there's a lot of pavilion and shelter naming opportunities. We have the Nussbaum in Oak Knoll. We have this new pavilion that was built in Oak Knoll. I think the shelters could be named. I think those naming opportunities haven't been talked about necessarily in terms of, recognizing folks in Shaw Park or Oak Knoll. These places are historic. People live here. They want to be recognized. They want family contribution gifts. Shelters are a great place to do that, or pavilions. And then also working with parks to identify various different needs, water bottle filling stations, seating, and other items such as that. Electric vehicle charging stations. This federal administration is very into that. So they have a 5-year federal program in which we can apply. Hopefully we will get the grant the first time. And if we do, we can subsidize it with additional private funding as well to start installing public infrastructure in both public parks parking lots, but also for the municipal garage, because this services the public. And then if we lay the lines down correctly, we can expand them and we can just continue to build the chargers as many as we want, because the hardest part is building the first part of it. And then planting trees, we are Tree City USA, and really promoting that type of opportunity through our parks and is something that I'm trying to do more. This just provides you kind of the snapshot of it in, a pillar project form, kind of what I already went through. And then these are our approved projects from 2022. So I'm gonna shut up. And then you tell me where to go or what you have questions about.
And just an overall comment that I just want to recognize the hard work that continues to go on behind the scenes at CCF, and just all of the great additional amenities that the city has benefited from over the years into the millions of dollars. We really appreciate you guys. We really appreciate the work that you do. And, we're, I think, lucky as a city to have a private partner like this. So, and thank you, Judy, for coming up with the idea. Yeah. So, does anybody have any general comments? And if not, we can talk about the electrical boxes. Okay. Let's talk electrical boxes. You want to throw that slide back up?
Yeah.
How many boxes do we have that are already painted? Anyone know?
Andrea, did you give me a number of 20-ish around that?
And some of them still look pretty good. Those two look pretty good. I mean, just quality wise, paint wise, but what is CCF and the PAC? And I know Jake Reeby has been thinking a lot about this over the years. So what is the thinking that you guys have right now, if any?
You're posing this question to me?
Yeah,
The art
yeah,
guy?
yeah.
Okay.
Or any of your compatriots.
What I would advocate for, and let me start off by saying what I also believe would be fundable, is something very innovative and interesting. So this image was actually pulled from the Regional Arts Commission's website, which I think is great. They're promoting that we have this public art in Clayton, et cetera. There are utility box programs and murals and things like that think about it just beyond kind of the recreation or an outlet or things like that. Though it's fun and quirky, you can do things that kind of push the boundaries a little bit in terms of, there's some that make it into an optical illusion to where you look at it, it both blends the landscape of the trees with the sky or something like that. You can provide, I've talked about this with others. You can also think about it as an equity opportunity, thinking about how you can gauge this opportunity to serve and provide the opportunity to those that might not have it. So minority artists and things like that, you could focus on something like that. That's the fundable angle, I think. The other is to paint them and think about it in terms of beautification, but not necessarily art. So it's just it's an enhancement, maybe that's easy on terms of a maintenance level. So there's benefits in that as well as making it kind of easy and not involving an artist whatsoever.
I guess one of my question really is, and maybe liaisons to CCF comment too, or you all, but is there either a recommendation or some thinking that's been done by the foundation in a direction, or are you looking for us to really brainstorm and come up with that?
I would answer it this way, Mayor, is that if we were to charge it, if we were to take the charge of it, then I'd want control of the direction, the artistic direction. In terms of the process, this is what we're doing with Whiteout Boulevard. There's quite a bit that goes into public art as it pertains to, similar to what the city does with RFQs and RFPs. It's the same type of thing. You want to make the opportunity open and available, because it is an opportunity that you're going to attach a dollar sign to, and it's also public work that is giving the artist a platform in the city of Clayton. So it's actually pretty great. And I'd want to be able to, I'd want us to do is control that process from soup to nuts.
I was gonna add, I think that like right after the art fair last year, Stacy Wiffler, who was chairman, I think still president of the board, called me and said that they were thinking about something about those boxes. And I think it was preliminary, the idea of taking, since there've been 25 plus years of the art fair, and every year they pick the best piece of art and that becomes the poster, that there might be a way to make that the theme of the boxes. Or
Yeah.
alternatively, since the art fair has, competition for young artists. So I guess at this point, I think the main idea I have is that we ought to be talking to the art fair and seeing if there's a way to tie it together. And I think where we left, I think I mentioned it to the mayor at the time and just said to Stacy, well, let's see where this goes, and somebody will probably circle back to you and see what you all are thinking. So that still seems to me a good way to go on this.
Well, I guess I just wanted to understand the traffic signal boxes just from like, just process wise, like, so is that something that you guys have identified as something that you want to fundraise for? Like, or is that something, I mean, I'm just trying to understand, or, cause if you're gonna fundraise, I mean, the wide out thing is a big project too. So I guess, I mean, maybe the signal boxes are lower hanging fruit, or, I mean, I'm just trying to understand
I would say if I was to prioritize it, it would be Y down, slam artworks, signal boxes.
okay, yeah.
And I would also say that, anything that we kind of focus on, it detracts from the other, in terms of just, it's not in terms of dollars, but in terms of just, bandwidth and focus.
Yeah.
Now that said, this idea, Gary, that you mentioned about partnering with a cultural organization that's already here that does the fair, that makes a lot of sense. With the Chapman Plaza and having Third Degree, they're an artist that is in the art fair. So if it benefits the city as in terms of showcasing the art fair and the organization that's headquarters here, that makes a lot of sense. Or Art St. Louis is another example, right? So you have two of those organizations here.
Okay, yeah, I guess, I mean, I think it would be nice to have them painted. I mean, I'm not like, but I also think it just kind of depends on, like you said, Alex, like painting them for utility. I mean, no pun intended, but paint them just so that they're colorful, or, versus painting them like this, which requires some real effort, so. I guess-
We've also discussed this idea of like historical wayfinding, so you can use them for that. It just kind of depends on what you want to use them for. I know that some of them have Susan Hanley,
Yeah,
not
the
Susan
one,
Hanley, but the Hanleys and others on it, Ralph Clayton, et cetera. So you can use this as kind of historical wayfinding if that's the direction you wanted to go.
so I guess then it's kind of you guys deciding as an organization, the route or the way that you want to go with it. I mean, deciding, so.
Again, I would say if you put it to us to be the main fundraiser, then I'm going to tell you that I'll probably want to fundraise with some degree of control.
Right.
Now, if Arts St. Louis or if the Art Fair, which also are fundraising organizations, is willing to foot the bill, or if there's willing to be some type of partnership as it pertains to that, that's interesting too.
Mhm.
And it makes it maybe a little bit easier because it's involving another partner and organization, and it kind of creates a different level of awareness.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
And did you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to figure out as much left after Bridget's question and your very good answer. Kind of on the priority, and it sounds like, and it makes sense that if we do this, it have something, the minority artists, the young artists, partnering with the art fair, something like that, a purpose beyond just having pretty pictures on the boxes. I also wanted to share that, and probably it's not just me, but it's not just the updating the painting. I know I've been approached that we need to update some of the images to better match our mission as it is today. when we get around to this, and the people who have raised that had a little more urgency, in getting that done. And then I guess the question for, that leaves me with is if we're trying to figure out, whether we talk with another partner or a CCF, is that something, if we were talking to another partner, who does that? Is that something that that the board decides what direction we're going, then staff approaches them, or what does that look like?
I think it can look
Well,
like how we'd like it to look,
Yeah,
but
and the staff, that's what we're trying to figure out, because we do have some, the condition varies from box to box. We have some that need to be addressed. We have some with figures that we've addressed other places in the city, but they're still on traffic signal boxes. And we don't have anything budgeted as far as going in and incrementally doing these or doing them all at once. And so for us, that guidance would be helpful as well. If it's going to go through a nonprofit organization to figure that out, that's great. If it's going to be on the city end of things, then we need to figure out and put together a plan for how we replace these. And then as we go through that process, at what point do we involve the Mayor's Commemorative Landscape Task Force or PAC or any of these other groups in the city that are typically involved in these decisions? So there's really two different pathways, and neither one is clear at the moment. We just know that we do have somewhat of a need to address it.
And I guess the last thing I'll say too is, certainly, I understand that you all have to stay within your capacity. Whatever you're doing, you do really, really well. There's a real comfort in the things that CCF handles, because picking up on the mayor's statements is that the work done is very well researched. It's everything about it is a comprehensive look at what will serve our community. So, and I think we all really appreciate that.
okay, Becky, you've had a comment for a while.
No, I just have an idea that I'd love to share and have you consider. There's an organization called St. Louis Artworks. Have you heard of them?
Yes.
So it's like youth apprentices who apply and get into this program, and they're led by like creative artists who are actually professional artists. And they've like unveiled art this fall in the Slam exhibit, The Culture, celebrating 50 years of hip hop. They also did some work that was commissioned by the Gateway Arch Parks Foundation downtown. So, so they're doing a lot of like cool stuff. And that would be, I think, an interesting, if there's a decision to do a project like this, it strikes me as like an ideal opportunity to partner with an organization like that and create real opportunity for youth in our city that are interested in art and visibility and all that jazz. So that's my.
Yeah, good. I remember you
Yeah.
talking about that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Gary, you've kind of, oh, yeah, absolutely.
There's needed in these structures.
Other than just cleaning them off, which we don't do on a regular basis, it's going in and who's going to touch these up. So I've seen traffic signal boxes that are done in other communities where it's almost like a vinyl wrap, like where you wrap cars and other things, and they're using that type of material versus paint. I don't know how the durability is versus paint, or if it's more color fast, but those that are in condition where they need to be addressed here, they're faded, or, just the elements have gotten to the paint on them. Outside of that, there's not much maintenance required. No, it's nothing like that. We just have some that they've been faded by the sun, faded by the elements. We have some where the content is probably something that needs to be addressed, those types of things. But the boxes the boxes themselves are incredibly durable. We don't.
I mean, I think just based on my past discussions about these, I think we would have to go and Matt would have, his Public Works would have to put a primer on them before they could be painted again, stuff like that. But other than that, yeah.
That's interesting, though. I wonder if vinyl like would hold up longer. I mean, I would think you could create a piece of art that you then print on a piece of vinyl and then wrap it. I don't know. I'm just wondering what would last longer.
It's just like how they wrap cars. I mean,
Right,
it's
yeah.
the same, and it lasts way longer
So I don't
Yeah.
know. Might.
Paint.
than
Maybe it-
paints. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because it's tightly wrapped. It's like professionally done. it lasts long-term.
More expensive too.
You'd be
Yeah.
surprised. You'd be
Yes.
surprised. I mean, there's a lot of companies that do this or collaborate with artists to do this. This is why it's also important to kind of vet it through a professional arts organization or artist, so it lasts as long as it possibly can. But it's back to this equity piece. It's like, do you, with an idea like this, Becky, you can achieve that by partnering with that organization through that opportunity. So you're giving that opportunity through the organization rather than, in a sense, the city or the foundation trying to coordinate an RFP and do this and that and the other. There's a lot of partner organizations that I know as well. I mean, Contemporary Art Museum and their youth program, COCA has a youth program. So they'd probably be more than willing to say, hey, I have this opportunity, that they'd come in with their youth artists and develop a proposal. And you might be able to get all of this stuff all in kind, if you look at a long-term trajectory. And maybe that's the way you could also do it too. You could run it through like a competition, not only necessarily between artists, but between arts organizations in St. Louis, which would be kind of fun.
Okay. But, any
Perhaps I'm just relatively low on the learning curve and don't know what's already been discussed about these things, but it seems to me that this is a great opportunity that's looking for some direction, some constraints, and a solution. And so as a result, I'd love for us to come up with something that says, here's the universe of the boxes, here's how many have already been painted, here's how many need to be redone in your opinion, here's how much it costs to do method A and method B, and then we can give some feedback in terms of general direction. But I'd prefer to stay out of the art business. I mean, there's people that have expertise in that. And so I would prefer us to give you some kind of general direction about this and then have you report back on how you're going to implement it.
Well, I think that's a good suggestion. I mean, I think essentially this project needs a plan. And so what kind of a group we put together to create that plan, I think is something we should maybe, offer up tonight if we have ideas. I mean, I think we ought to get together just a broader group than just Alex and some CCF folks to think about that. I think it should include Matt from Public Works. And, maybe someone from the Equity Commission, or, I mean, I think we could think about that. But, and Pat, yes, PAC, yes, and maybe even someone from Architecture Review Board. I mean, just, to put together a little team that would think about this, do a little research on some of these organizations that have been mentioned. Matt will certainly understand about costs, and that will help us decide, I don't know how much it would cost to just, if we were to take on hiring somebody to paint these boxes, what would that cost? So, I think that's what we need to do. And maybe what we could do is ask you and the liaisons for CCF to spearhead getting that group together, and then we can start moving forward. Does that sound reasonable to everybody?
I will do that, and I will put together probably a bones before I start to, think about all these different committee members, just as a sampling of kind of, what is possible, like understanding the costs and things like that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I mean, I think that group coming together ought to think about what's the objective here? Are we just beautification? Are we trying to say something? Or what, do we, or is our objective to give youth an opportunity to do a project? I mean, what is our purpose and how do we want to fulfill it? So, I think we need to think a little deeper about it and, then get back to it. So we'll depend on you to kind of spearhead getting that group together. David, you can help with who should be. Okay, great. Thank you. So now, I think we need to talk about Ralph and where he can live. Unfortunately, you guys, I have been talking with the library here in town and, the Clayton branch, and I think they are very interested in housing this exhibit for a while. They have not gotten back to me definitely, so I apologize about that. But just assuming that either that could happen or not, it could maybe be housed somewhere else temporarily while we prepare a spot within our city properties. But I think at some point it needs to have a home in our city, one of our city locations. And so I'd just love to hear what people are thinking about that and maybe give us a little food for thought on what we might look to down the road, because I think then we would need to kind of research dimensions and how we would attach it and what we would actually put there and all that good stuff. I kind of have, you've seen the display that was at the center, and I kind of have in my mind that it would be something kind of like that. But if you've seen the display in the police station on the Stuck family and the architecture there, it's a nice, kind of a permanent, just, diorama of all the info there and recognizing them. So, and recognizing that this is a painting that has some value. So we can't just put it out in the weather. Okay. I'm open to ideas.
Does,
I'm sorry, what does that plaque say? Can't remember what.
oh, it's a
Does
lot.
It says a lot.
A lot of plaques.
It's not a plaque. It's some like foam core boards that tell his life story, essentially. And the actual exhibit was called The Place, the Man, or something like that. And it was like some information about Clayton in the early days, and then how Clayton came about, and then more about his life personally and what he did for a living, and the fact that he was a slaveholder and all this. Yeah. And it had his portrait. Yeah.
I have a question strictly on the like value of the art, which you alluded to. Like, is it actually like a piece of art that is considered to have value from an artistic sense? Was the painter someone well-known or any of that? Do you know?
I'll say that it wasn't appraised, but I'd probably further answer that it has more value to the city of Clayton than it does on a national level or scope.
Yeah, like it's not something that would be of interest to anyone necessarily
To a
outside.
museum, probably, maybe the history museum, perhaps because of the county seat. So it's possible that it could be a part of their collection. It's never been considered or thought of.
I think I'm stretching my memory, but the painter or the artist, I think it is, this isn't the only portrait they ever did. I mean, they were somewhat
Oh,
known
sure.
regionally for portraiture, and so it
would-
has some wherewithal. And so, and we did invest in restoring it as well to clean it up and fix it up. So, right, it has more value to Clayton.
I thought the exhibit at the center was great because not only did it include the portrait, but it also, it was a very full-bodied, full-throated discussion of Ralph, pluses, minuses. He was a slave owner. There was all of that. And so in many ways, I think it was great if the kids who went to the center ever looked at it, which you never know. But I think it's an important part of the history of Clayton. And I've shared this anecdote before that my granddaughter and her friend, when I took him home, had no idea why the city of Clayton was called that. Thought it had to do with clay in the soil. Now, I don't know if other kids are so unaware of Ralph Clayton, but the whole story of Ralph Clayton, I think, is fascinating. And, I think if it could be done, put it at the library, I think that'd be wonderful because it'd get a lot of visibility. I said, I guess 2.5 years ago when we started discussion, I still think that some part of that display belongs to City Hall. This is, after all, Clayton, and there's this little, very 8x10 sort of photo down on the shelf that nobody ever comes to because they don't pay traffic tickets anymore. So it seems to me there's a great wall right outside when you turn your left here. We have 2 nice floral portraits, which of course have nothing to do with Clayton. I'd love to see some aspect of the Clayton history on this wall. And I don't think it has to be, you can have a copy of the portrait. It doesn't have to be one place or another, but there's a great story to tell. And like I said, I think it's odd. I've been to a lot of city halls. There's nowhere in this room that you have any idea, except for right here. It says Clayton, which nobody sees on the, except for the people who sit here. So I think it's time that some part of the display show up at City Hall. But if it could also be at the library, someday at Hanley House, all of those are great places for people to see it and understand the history of Clayton.
My memory of the exhibit is, and the impressions it left me of Ralph Clayton are less illustrious than yours, Gary. I appreciated the context that it provided, what I felt was like a breadth of information about the circumstances. And it was like, I don't know how many years ago now that I read it. So I might get some of this wrong, but my takeaway was he was a rich guy who wanted his name on something, which is awesome. Like we benefited from that as a city and a county. And like the idea that at one time in our community and our country, wealthy people thought about that kind of thing and looked at how they could give their resources to their communities. Certainly, I think is a very interesting lens and worth celebrating or remembering. But not that like he himself was actually like something to celebrate outside of that, I guess. Like he didn't have a civic interest. He didn't have a like government interest or, like service interest aside from obviously this generous gift that he gave. So I don't have a lot of opinion about where it goes as long as what I would like to see is that context remain in place so as not to like give any misrepresentation about like what he did and how he did it. And so that's like, like I said, I don't really feel like we need to decide that as a board. I said that at the time that we voted on this in the first place. Like, I don't feel like we need to vote on where it lands in the end. It doesn't feel necessary to me. But that I would like the story to remain in context as it was developed by all of our experts in history who put it together.
Yeah, I agree that it's the context certainly has to follow the portrait. I would never imagine
That's a
that we're just
given.
gonna hang it the way it was
Given.
hanging before.
Yeah.
But I do agree with Gary. I think it should eventually find its way back here. I think it would be great if it's in the library, but we're not a huge city. We don't have a lot of like government buildings. So we either I'm not sure it belongs at the center of Clayton. I don't think it belongs to the police department. So I don't know where else we're gonna put it. So, I think finding a wall in here where it ends up landing and yeah, we don't have to be the decision makers, but I don't know who else is gonna decide where it goes.
Right.
So, so that's that would be my thought. Well,
Kidding. So,
yeah,
Susan,
that would be my thought,
thank
yeah.
you, Bridget. Anything, Rick, anything from you?
I don't feel strongly about it other than to say I think it should be prominently displayed. I think it'd be a great idea to rotate it over time and have it in different places because there isn't any one audience that goes to any.
Yeah.
So rotating it will at least expose.
Okay. All right, so I think, and I can talk about this with the landscape task force too, because I know they have good thoughts about stuff like this. Susan, you have.
Yeah,
something to say?
just picking up what Rick said, I wonder too, if wherever it becomes displayed, I think we should consider what is the story of Clayton, not just of Ralph Clayton? To have that portrait just with his story on a wall is very different from having, this is where our city began, this is the context of that, and this is who we are today.
Yeah, I think that's a good build because it can be more about the history of Clayton, of
About
which he is a major
Exactly,
part,
not- Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
Mayor, I'd recommend that, the exhibition was for the center of Clayton. Obviously, there's too much text in my opinion. But keeping that context with the portrait, you're able to kind of create or redraft what's known as an extended wall label. Right. So we see this in museums where it's basically just a paragraph. So trying to take all of that content and edit it down to a paragraph and contextualize it and can stay with it. This is what the History Museum does, this is what the Art Museum does. And that can be done. That could be a great task for the task force to take all of that content that those panels have had and like try to edit it down into a
Yep.
paragraph, which is, it's difficult to do. But important.
Okay, I think I will, yes. Oh, Judy, do you have something to say? Yeah.
Can we do the mic?
Do you want to come up and
You're gonna
speak in the mic? That way we got it down.
You're formal.
You know, I'm all about telling stories and history. And to me, that's what's important here is not him or who he was or what he looks like or how he's been restored, which is lovely. But I think we need to tell the story about our community and the founding of our community and what it was like then, how we've evolved, what we prioritize now. And I think that has really value to young people who really have no clue
Right.
what life might have been like in the 18th century, 19th century. So I wholeheartedly endorse the landscape task force, taking a look at that, coming back with proposals. I will tell you the exhibit in the police station was very expensive. It's really well done, but it was costly. So perhaps CCF can look for a funder for something like this when the time is right. I think we might be able to help in that way.
I think we're just adding you to our task force for this project as well.
Oh, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Okay, so I'll kind of start weaving this into the task force work and we'll still see if we can get it over to the library for a while. Yeah. So, all right, very good. Well, it's just a little before 7. And any other comments or questions for the CCF group? Or any questions from CCF for us?
Oh,
Another thought, the light boxes. I just want to emphasize something Alex said, that when we prioritize our energy, our first priority is why down public art. And I don't want, you know, there are only so many who can divide and conquer. And I want to be careful that we're not diverted in too many directions. So I just want you to know that.
Yeah, I think it's going to take us a while to figure out exactly what, why and how on the light boxes anyway. So,
can I ask one question?
Yes.
Coming in. First, I think Cordell, your term is coming to an end. Is that right? This year? You're wrapping up your time as president. So thank you for your service. And I was curious if you could remind all of us what the board will look like next year. Or
Jennifer Volk is sitting right next to Cordell. She will be the 2024 incoming president.
wonderful.
yeah. Great.
Great. Thanks.
There's other officers, executive committee, but I won't say all their names just for time.
All good.
Thanks for your
Very good.
service.
Thank you all. And thank you for your partnership on the historic plaques that you're doing with the landscape task force. That is appreciated. so
Mayor, can
much.
I add one thing?
Of course.
Under this heading of arts, something that I think I've talked to, and I think he's talked to the mayor, but I think something the city is very interested in is not only the traditional art piece, but performing arts and how we can somehow get that into the city. And I just would acknowledge, I know from Alex's background, connections to the city where most of the most of theatrical venues are in the St. Louis metropolitan area, that I think we should keep in mind, to the extent Alex has time to be a resource for us, that it would be very helpful as we try to bring some performing arts into the city, particularly small theater, that type of thing, which I know you're familiar with. So I hope that's something that we can
Great
look at.
point. Yeah, great point. We might be expanding our definition of art going forward, which would be great. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, guys. Okay. Oh, and there's Ira. All right. Welcome everyone to our December 19 meeting. And we will start off by calling the roll.
Alderman Berkowitz,
Here.
Alderwoman McAndrew,
Here.
Alderwoman Buse.
Here.
Alderwoman Patel,
Here.
Alderman Fader,
Here.
Alderman Hummel,
Here.
Mayor Harris,
Here.
City Manager Gibson.
Here.
City Attorney Carr.
Here.
All right, now's the time in our agenda to ask for public requests and petitions. If anyone here in our audience or online in our audience would like to talk about something that's not on our agenda tonight, this is your chance. I don't see anything from anyone here or from anyone online. So we can move on to the first item on our agenda, which is the public hearing for the planned unit development on South Merrimack. I will open the public hearing and request proof of publication.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request for review and consideration of the rezoning and related plan unit development for proposed mixed-use development. The rezoning, plan unit development, and subdivision plat are being addressed together in this report, though the plat and land use elements entail separate ordinances on the board's agenda this evening. The project received Architectural Review Board approval, and the Plan Commission recommended approval of the site plan, subdivision plat, rezoning and development plan on November 20th, 2023. The 42,800 square foot site includes two parcels located at the northwest corner of the intersection between North Merrimack Avenue and Bonham Avenue. The properties have a zoning designation of HDC or High Density Commercial. The southern property, 121 South Merrimack Avenue, contains an 11-story office building previously occupied by St. Louis County government and is often referred to as the World Trade Center building, building or 7-Up building. The northern property, 111 South Merrimack Avenue, is currently vacant. Adjacent land uses include residential, office, retail, and government. The project consists of the partial demolition and renovation of the existing structure, partial vacation of an east-west alley, the rezoning of the site to PUD, the consolidation of the two lots, and the construction of a mixed-use commercial development on the site. The proposed development measures 21 stories and a total height of approximately 244 feet. The structure would contain 298 apartment units, 2,000 square feet of retail and restaurant spaces, 158 on-street parking spaces. Under a separate previously approved lease, the development also has the right to 200 dedicated parking spaces in the adjacent city-owned garage. City standard streetscape will be installed along the project limits on Bonham Avenue and South Merrimack Avenue. The proposed development is a mixed-use PUD, and a mixed-use PUD must contain a reasonable ratio of areas devoted to distinct land use categories as determined by the Board of Aldermen and the exercise of its legislative discretion. With only one commercial tenant space available for lease, the operation and characteristics of the tenant are important. Staff are of the opinion that occupancy of the commercial tenant space should be a priority and should be achieved within 6 months of when the occupancy permits are issued for the residential portion of the development. A PUD must provide public benefits to the surrounding neighborhoods and to the city above and beyond what can be reasonably achieved by application of the zoning provisions of the original zoning district. The Board of Aldermen may approve alternatives to the zoning regulations, subdivision regulations, or design standards applicable to the property proposed to be rezoned to a PUD in exchange for developer-provided public benefits. The number of requested modifications to the development standards drive the number of public benefits that the developer is required to provide. All PUDs shall provide at least one public benefit or combination of public benefits that total at least 10 points beyond those additional points required for any desired code alternatives, even if no code alternative is requested. After the minimum 10 points are achieved, the developer shall provide a public benefit or combination of public benefits totaling at least 5 points for each code alternative requested. The total number of public benefit points required to be achieved for this project is 30. A table was provided in the report that outlines the public benefits identified by the applicant and staff. Staff analysis of the proposed benefits is included in the table, along with a recommended point value. The Plan Commission voted to recommend the staff point analysis to the Board of Aldermen, totaling 37 benefit points. Staff and Plan Commission are also of the belief that the project meets the criteria for PUD approval as it relates to conformance with the downtown master plan and surrounding environment, stormwater, landscaping, driveways, sidewalks, utilities, lighting, circulation, parking, and overall design. Staff recommends the Board of Aldermen approve the rezoning and plan unit development per the required development commitments set forth in the ordinance Exhibit C, the Shaw PUD document. Staff also recommends that the Board of Aldermen approve the subdivision plat with the conditions set forth in the ordinance for adoption. We have the applicant here this evening, as well as Anna Crane, our Director of Planning and Development Services, if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, I'm going to open the discussion and I wonder if, I think we can just, it's been through ARB and everything. I think we can just go and have a specific questions and comments unless anybody among us want to have a full review of the development. Okay. And anyone in the audience, is there anyone here in the audience other than the developer who would like to address the board on this development? Okay, so, and none online. Okay, great. So we'll go, and a lot of times we go in order of seniority. Hi, Chris. And so we'll do that, starting with Alderman Berkowitz. Do you have any comments or questions? And maybe we'll need to have you guys come on up to the podium probably. You want to, Chris, just introduce yourself into the microphone and all that.
Yes, I'm Chris Cedargreen, design architect on the project. Michael Knight, the developer, is in Kansas City and on Zoom. He came down with the flu, so decided not to come. And then Tim Sandwig and Bob Neely from LJC are here as well.
Okay, very good. And yeah, one of our aldermen has the flu as well. So, so Ira, go on. Do you have a question or comment?
I do have the flu, but I've managed to be here. I'm sorry that your developer could not make it.
He's on Zoom. He's on Zoom.
I'm here. Well, good. All right. We're
Like
zooming
you.
together. All right. Cool. So congratulations to both of you. This is a very difficult site to deal with. And I know that for a fact, because I've kind of followed through all the different machinations of different developers trying to go through it and make it work. It looks like you found the right combination. And I think you should be congratulated for the work you've done. I've got only a few questions, and the one that I think will surprise no one has to do with the 6 units that you have, that you decided to allot as affordable units. I understand the formula used for that. My only question is, it doesn't seem to indicate which units, size of the units that we're talking about. And I will preface my question with, I am hoping like heck it's not going to be 6 of the smallest units in the building. So
good evening. That's a good question. So I also am suffering from I was supposed to fly in last night for this meeting today, and then lo and behold, I got A and B influenza, which is great.
What?
Yeah, I got both. So I thought I had COVID. Turns out I just have A and B.
I've got A, and it's enough. So if
yeah,
you
it's
got
enough.
both, yeah, okay.
So Tamiflu and fluids and get some sleep, but the fever is the worst part. But to answer your question, the math on this project only required 2 affordable units. When we had our public outreach with our neighbors at the Park Place Tower and some of the other folks, and I had a nice lady who actually sent us an email and wrote me, actually tracked me down in Kansas City and called me. She asked us if we could do better than that. It's a fair question. So we came up with the 6 affordable units because one of our neighbors asked us to do better. And I said, what do you think's fair? 4? She goes, I think it'd be better if you did 6. And I said, 6 it is. And that's how we got there, is just by kind of engaging our neighbors. And then to your point, it's not 6 studios. It'll be a 1-bedroom here, a studio here, a 2-bedroom there. They're spread throughout the building. Matter of fact, one of the units that's I've designated for affordable is on the first floor. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath kind of double master suite, and it actually has its own courtyard. So it has its own like little backyard courtyard. So Yeah, we're not just shoehorning those in. They're not gonna be 6 studios. They're spread throughout the building and all the different floor plan types. And we've even tried to ask our property manager if there's a way we can get creative with those affordable units where we can, I don't know, you got to make sure we stay compliant with any kind of fair housing, but can we do a lottery system? Can we do something where it's like you know, where we can maybe first responders or school teachers or something to try to, you know, see how we get people in there. But that's how we got there. That's how we got the 6 units, and the floor plan types are going to be all different types all throughout the building.
Okay, is that part of the, I mean, is that somewhere in the plan? Because I didn't see it, so. In terms of-
It just is, it's in the plan that we're just doing 6 units, and it's, I mean, I guess nobody's telling me I have to do it. We're just doing it.
I hear you. Well, it's part of the PUD now. It's part of your point system, so it is part of why of getting passage tonight. So
sure,
it's in the deal. So I'd
if
like,
you,
yes, there's some way
if you want to add some language that just says something like the 6 affordable units will not just be 6 studios, I'm totally fine with it.
Okay, well, that's, David, what do you think?
Yes, we can add that to the exhibit on page 7 of the documents, page 26 of the packet. There's a condition there, E, that talks about the 6 housing units and 80% AMIs. So Stephanie and I can quickly come up with some language to add there that it's a mix of units within the building.
Okay, very good. Very good.
Section 3 of the ordinance as well.
Good. I didn't notice, and I'm sure you got them. I talked to the mayor earlier. Do you have bike racks in this? Are we putting bike racks in?
What we have is we created an internal bike storage room for the resident bikes. So I think that's how we got there, is we didn't need the bike racks out in front of the building. If I'm correct, Tim's there with LJC. He'd probably know better, but I think when we were initially talking about it, we were doing bike racks, and then they were like, well, you could just create a bike storage room. And so I think that's what we ended up doing.
And we have bike racks at the public plaza, the public.
Oh,
park.
yeah.
Pocket
There you
park.
go.
Oh, you do have them outside
Yes.
oh, okay. All right. Because it's kind of hard to assume that everyone's going to be taking their bikes into storage each time. So, and then let's see.
Were you going to ask about charging stations?
That was one other question. Yeah, I think I did read about the charging stations. You had those set up on the property for your tenants. I know that much.
We have 10 charging stations with the ability to expand that to 20 charging stations. That includes charging stations in both garages under the new construction and under the existing. And that also includes charging stations for some of the ADA spots that are located in the building.
Okay. All right. And that looked fine. Now you're expected to have your commercial, whatever tenant you're going to have for the commercial should be moving in. Do you have any ideas as you sit here today? What is it we're looking at? What kind of commercial, I guess, retail are we talking about? Do you know?
So, I mean, the brokers that we've been talking to, Cushman & Wakefield's pretty much the team that we've been working with since day one. That's who I work with pretty exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
I've told them I want something cool, creative restaurant, something along those lines. To date, the only thing somebody brought me was a bank proposal. I didn't think another retail bank sounds like anything anybody's interested in. They're pretty bad tenants anyway. The other part is, I'm not going to say anybody's name out, but there's a local restaurant that used to have a really good following in a different location that was displaced. And I have met with that gentleman a couple times, and he's a little out there, but he does a really good job, and it's a really cool place with really good food. That would be the perfect fit for this spot where it's got cafe seating, kind of a hip vibe, good food, very friendly atmosphere. That would be what I would like to see there. And turns out our timelines overlap perfectly. So that would be something that would be this working. The stipulation on the timing of the commercial tenant was a condition that was added to make sure that we just don't forever have a vacant space. And as I shared this with the ARB and the PUD board, you know, our driver for that space, excuse me, hold on a second, sorry.
Take your time.
I got my herbal honey tea here.
I'll drink to that.
Right on, there you go. So, the driver for this space is not revenue by any means, shape or form. It's a little over 2,000 square feet. So we are trying to find the right partner that's a good fit for the building, that's a good fit for the neighborhood, that's an amenity for us and the neighborhood. So if we've got to offer reduced rent or up to TI dollars, totally fine with that. I just got to get the right partner on board. And obviously that's a little hard, but with the things in the market happening, I'm hoping that's going to get a little easier.
Would you be opposed to us putting in a restriction that the retailer cannot be a bank? Or some
I
other?
don't care. I'm not going to put a
I
bank
thought
in there.
that
no
was
matter what.
already, when we say retail, it doesn't mean a bank unless we allow a bank.
So
Did I miss?
when we made the adjustment to the ordinance, we stated commercial use rather than just retail. We broadened that definition and left it basically up to the board's discretion to determine what appropriate commercial uses could go in there. So that would include banks.
Right, and I'm asking if we could exclude banks. Is that possible?
It sounds like we have the right to do it and I would support it.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you'd support it too, so.
Yeah,
I would
I have
support
no
it.
opposition to a prohibition against a retail bank.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, that'd be great. David, can you put that in there?
Yes, we'll work on that as well.
Okay,
Yeah, no opposition here.
very good. All right, those are my questions, and thank you so much for showing up even by Zoom. It's not, if you're spending time in bed like I have, it's a lot to get up and just even turn on the Zoom, so.
Yeah,
Thank
I went and took a shower and got out of bed so I could be on this.
Right,
I was gonna say, you don't look sick. Neither of you look sick.
right.
Okay.
Well, I did the same thing. I even shaved. I'm like,
Oh.
okay, yeah, okay, well, all right, but thank
All
you
right.
very much, and congratulations.
And hope you feel better.
Thank you, you too, same to you.
Bridget, do you have some comments?
I'm, I was obviously at the long presentation that, Michael and Chris and your team gave before the Plan Commission and Architectural Review Board. And I'll just comment that the Plan Commission Architectural Review Board was, very, in favor of the project, was certainly complimentary of the architectural details that will go into, redesigning the current building and then creating the new tower. I think it also has some really interesting art features. Obviously there's the sky art, which was talked about a lot at the Plan Commission. The art canopy too, it is self-contained in the building, so it's kind of by where their pool deck is. So it's not really available to the public, but it projects pretty high in the air right at that corner. So certainly when the sun hits it, there'll be reflections from the art canopy on the sidewalk. So I think the public will feel the art canopy, even though it's not necessarily going to be available. The public, the people in the building, and Chris, you obviously comment if I'm incorrect, but the people outside of this art canopy or people who don't live in the building can't really walk under it, but they will, I think, experience it if they're walking on the sidewalk. So, but I think that's a really nice addition to the building. But it really was, well received by the Plan Commission largely. So, they gave a great presentation there and, everybody was pretty supportive of the points that they requested, so.
Good. Okay, great. Susan, anything from you?
Yeah, I appreciate bringing this project to Clayton. It looks good. It's a use of a space that, again, from my amateur viewpoint, it's creative, it's sustainable, it's all those great things. When I'm looking at the criteria in the downtown master plan, we're in the midst of two comprehensive or master planning processes, the livable communities as well as our comprehensive planning. And one of the issues that repeatedly comes up, even though we don't have a final product yet, is that people drive their cars very short distances because, biking and walking is not that easy. So when I look at this project and the bike racks that Ira brought up, with the bike storage, it was a little unclear. And it sounds like you're close to what the city typically requires, but because I guess it's a storage room plus racks, are you getting the same space at least for people to store their bikes as the city code the ordinance would have required of you?
That's correct. Yeah.
It kind of just switches out. Okay, because the other part of it is I would hope, because you are, this is the high density multifamily, and you're right by the Metro Link, and then you've got the park over here, you've got a school on this side, a school on that side, residential, so you really can be a linkage in all directions. And as the utilities are moved to the roofs and everything else is opened up on those sidewalks, there was a comment in here that some of the opened up space could then be used for additional street parking. I would propose that whether it's the city or you as a developers look at it more as pedestrian, walkable, bikes, whatever, because again, the park is right there and the businesses and everything else, everything's right around you. And that is something that's come up in our master planning processes, that these are comments that we get over and over again. So something to think about as you do that. I was a little bit confused on the EV, the charging stations. Are any of them open to the public or just to tenants and tenant guests?
They're really just sort of the tenant's guests that come into the building, if they're available, how they end up being able to use those as a guest. But as public parking, they're not available to public parking because we don't have public parking in the podium of the building where that existing parking is.
Right. So for the public benefit part in the assignment of points, I don't know, is there any way, I don't know if there could be parking. It seems like there should be something available for a public benefit versus.
So
tenant
we
benefit.
have guest parking, tenant parking, and the visitor parking that can access that, plus our ADA space. Our ADA spaces in the new construction can also access those charging stations. And like previously stated, we have 10 and we're going to expand that to 20 as EVs become more popular. That's the plan.
All right, I'm still, so, but it's for people visiting the building or residents of the building only? Is that what?
Correct.
If I come to the restaurant, can I park in those spots? Or is it only if you're tied to a tenant, residential tenant?
Well, actually, the benefit would be is that if you're coming in the restaurant, you would park in the city garage and be a paying customer in that garage.
So without access to the charging units that you're planning on putting in?
Correct. That was part of the previous new parking agreement, is that the building would utilize less parking spaces and then reuse the existing parking spaces on site to kind of open up the public parking garage to have more spaces accessible to the public.
Right, so what I'm looking for is how to get the public benefit the charging stations. I mean, that infrastructure is what we need across the country. And for our, is there any way that if it can be?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That was just how it was put into the application. And I think we were told that on previous projects, those benefit points were given for EV chargers, regardless if they were public or private.
Oh, I think typically there's a public access. Yeah, you want to help with this, whether it be along the street parking or something else.
So it's been covered for a variety. Our last two PUDs have had more public focused uses, like a hotel, so those garages would be more come and go from the public compared to this garage. But for example, Forsythia condos, they had EV charging stations within their garage, which would be similar to this, where it'd be restricted to the residents or their visitors that would access that. Idea for EV charging stations and still providing public benefit points from a staff's perspective is that adding more EV charging within a community increases the availability of EV just to our general community. And so that again is hitting on our sustainability goals. So while providing these chargers would not generally be accessible. So somebody just driving through Clayton wouldn't come and use this EV charger, but they could use a publicly accessible EV charger elsewhere, while a resident of this building would not take up that publicly accessible EV charging station because they would be accessing one within their residential building. So that was staff's idea of why we still awarded public benefit points here.
Okay, I struggle with that. I don't know if there is a way to get an EV charging station available to the public, whether it be along a street parking area, something invested in the public garage or something else that's getting public benefit points. Maybe early on we were doing, I don't remember that recently, for a non-public use, getting the credits. It could be that, as it continues to develop, I hope we move in that direction.
Yeah, the public or the chargers within the right of way is something that we are still working through with Public Works, because as you guys can see, these charging units take up space within our right of way, and they also have the lines and other plug-in utilities that are associated with them, which make them not ideal for placing in our streetscape to attach to parallel parking space on a street. So we haven't quite figured that design out yet, which is why we didn't recommend shifting these proposed chargers out to the street parking. But again, this is public benefit points are your legislative decision as the board. So I'll
Is that something that could be worked on with this project, or is there a way to make it accessible, or there another approach, whether it's a garage or otherwise?
As far as on the street, I don't know that we're ready for that just yet, or that we have anything designed as far as, like Anna said, as far as layout or anything else. As far as something internal to the project, I have to defer to the developer on that. But as far as a public facing charging space, we don't have anything designed and ready to go for the parallel situation. There's always the question of, what side of the car is the port on those
Right.
those types of things. So
Well,
it's
it's gotta happen. I mean, this is the interest in the cars is there. The
right.
infrastructure's
We're,
not.
we're just struggling with the fact that they work better in garages and service parking lots than parallel spaces at the moment.
Yeah, that's something we need to address sooner than later. Okay, I'll move on from there. Another question I had is the permeability, impermeable surface at 97%. I know you all are going gold, so I assume everything is great, but how does that work? If you have a building that, especially with the weather patterns we've been seeing, I don't know how your neighbors feel about 97% impervious.
Yes, well, that existing podium, we're not changing that. We're actually adding more permeable space along bottom where there were utilities there.
Mhm.
And then the other area is just to the north. There's a sliver of space. There's not much there. But it was all hard surface to begin with. We met all of the requirements. And then from the LEED standpoint, the gold standpoint, we're using a lot of other initiatives to achieve the point to be LEED certified, LEED certified. So, I mean, the permeability, if that's really the issue, it's we have maximized the permeability on the site from the existing condition and enhanced it slightly.
Okay, and is there anything that, right, so is there anything that you're needing to do infrastructure wise to capture the rainwater or anything, or this is something that?
Yeah, there's nothing that we're doing infrastructure wise other than what's required by MST.
And the other question I had is the light art and everything sounds fascinating, and that I'm curious how that fits with concerns with, is that, I don't know if it's an event or it's constantly there, and how it fits with light pollution, and how it fits with migratory patterns and things like that.
Right, when we had our community meeting and the Parkview Tower people were there, they had that same issue at 212. And the solution was for all the lights to go off on that upper deck at 10 o'clock. And it's pretty traditional that most activity on open decks, pool areas, they shut down at 10, and we do something that's complements that. It probably would be 10 o'clock. From the standpoint of migration, that's something that there's certain times that you do have to turn that off. because the migrating birds, we all know with the arch and other events around town, you've got to be aware of that when you can't have the lights on. So does that answer your?
So your plan is you'll have a 10 PM similar time when they go off at night. And then for the migration patterns, the spring, those two migratory times, you plan to, what's it called? Lights out, whatever it's called, to comply with that. as
Definitely comply with,
migratory.
yeah. for sure.
Okay, that's what I've got. So I've got, okay. Thank you.
Great, good questions. Moving on.
Yeah, I have a question, I think for David. The address is South Merrimack and the intersection is listed as North Merrimack. And what is up with that? Is that a typo or are we confused about our addresses and street names?
On South Merrimack here.
See what the part I'm seeing in your report? On the background, it says 2 parcels located at the northwest corner of the intersection between North Merrimack Avenue and Bonham.
RFBA. Okay.
That's all. I just wanted to be clear about that. And then just positive feedback. I like to see us reusing a building where it's possible instead of always demolishing and rebuilding. So appreciate that. Comment in general or for our director Anna Crane is to think about, like, I don't think reuse is the same as architectural significance. And I know we're rethinking how we talk about what we value and what we'll give point for. So, maybe we look at actually like more explicitly incentivizing like reuse or minimizing demolition as something we look at in the future. Because that feels like a benefit in general, or could be considered a benefit. Love that you're going lead gold. We often see silver. I like what you said about affordable housing, not just being studios, and it's great. Thanks for your work.
Great.
Thank you.
I was in the audience when it was in front of the plan commission, so I saw your full presentation and I thought it was excellent. And as Alderman Berkowitz said, this has been around for a long time and been hard to develop. And so I think it's exciting to see. I think the 6 units that are being provided, that's a very positive thing. It's more than we've had in other projects. And to me, it's more than a token. I mean, it's still a small percentage, but 6 units is of some significance. I think that's great. I do like the provision that was added in here, putting a deadline on the timing of the commercial space. It sounds to me like, from what I've heard, that the ownership is going to try very hard to get the best space, and will do it expeditiously. Nonetheless, we have other PUD projects where the commercial stuff just languishes, doesn't have a time requirement, and we're not able to really get them in there. So I think that's a positive. All in all, I'm very supportive and excited to see it happen.
Thank you.
Okay, Rick.
Great, thank you. I was hoping you'd be willing to share perhaps some of the challenges you may still face in bringing this to a reality. And what I'm thinking about there is that we're aware that many projects have faced challenges due to rising construction costs, challenges regarding financing, and that I'm just curious about site conditions. There's a lot of challenges with doing what you're doing here. So I'm more trying to do it in the context of anticipating either what could go wrong or what do you worry about that might cause you to have to come back to us?
Well, I mean, that's a very realistic thing. And I know most developers will tell you they've got it all figured out. They're super optimistic. Nothing's ever going to go wrong. They're smart, experienced, and they've done this, and you should trust them. There's always a reasonable amount of skepticism. There's always some doubt. There's always unforeseen things that can occur. You're right. We've seen demand in the labor market rise. We've seen increased construction costs. We've seen increased interest rates. We've seen constrictions on lending markets and equity markets. A lot of that, I think, had to do with over panicking. People tend to worry about the tsunami a little too late. and they start running when they see the wave instead of when the water's going away. But I think just from what happened in the last couple of weeks with the Fed announcements, we already have construction terms in place for this project with a lender. But just what we've seen in the last couple of days, if not the last week, with the Fed announcing, rate lowering rates in the next year, the financing markets have already opened back up. We've already seen the 10-year drop below, that in the 4 mark, and things have just already opened up to the point that I've already gotten a bunch of emails and phone calls. Hey, have you found a construction lender? Hey, do you have all your equity lined up? So, people kind of panic quickly on those things and adjust a little too quickly. People are reactionary. They don't usually look at the long term. I think our thing here that's different is it's a very long-term approach to this project, from who we do the project with, who our team is, and so on. Also, some of the other things that we're seeing is material costs in the market have actually started to not only plateau, but things like lumber and steel studs and, your base material costs for electrical wiring and so on. We've seen those things start to dip and come back to reality. So something can always go wrong. And we're carrying a large contingency on this project from a financial standpoint. Something could go wrong. The good thing is I think we have a good team, a good contractor, a good architect. We've got a great structural engineer. Everybody's coming together on this thing. It is an existing condition building where we're utilizing what's there. The issue that might have existed with that building at one point in time is being mitigated by diminishing the size and structure of that building. The new construction tower, in all fairness, that is probably the most straightforward part of this project. And, new construction tends to be less tricky than adaptive reuse or historic development. So that part seems to be the easier part, believe it or not. Even things that we've tried to make sure how we use our cranes and our buck hoist and even our window wall assembly, how that can be installed from the interior instead of the exterior. Just things like that mitigate risk and or inconvenience to ourselves, the project, or the surrounding public. So yeah, something could always go wrong. But we've got a really good team. And I think that's what's going to make sure we mitigate those issues and contingencies is by making sure we have the right team on board from the beginning, and everybody sitting there from LJC to Parrot Construction to Uzen Case, our structural engineer. These guys do this stuff all across the country. And I think the best way you can mitigate those risks and concerns and contingencies is to make sure you do your homework on who your team is first. And I think we have a good team.
Okay, very good. Anything else from the board? So, you guys brought up some great points, and I want to just again compliment you guys on putting this project together. Really creative reuse of what's there, and really you're solving a problem that's been out there lingering for at least a decade, 2 decades, whatever. It's been an eyesore, and you're going to fix it, and that's just fantastic. I also want to tell you, I'm super thrilled about your skyline art. I've been talking skylines for a few years now, and a lot of our buildings, they're beautiful buildings, but they don't put a mark on our skyline really that's unique and significant. So this is really a great idea. I really appreciate, I appreciate it especially. And I also want to just compliment our staff. The idea that, you guys have pointed out, this is going to be a really dense residential area, perhaps the most dense in our city, at least to date and be ever. And so it's really important to get the best possible thing in your very, very small retail space. I wish there was more room for retail space, but I know the constraints. So, I just can't emphasize enough how important it is to get something that engages the community, that makes the street more lively, that's really accessible to a lot of people. And while I'm at it, I'll just throw in another thing, you know, if you want to put some entertainment factors in there, that would be great. You know, from listening to our board meetings, we have been looking for that everywhere. That would add a lot to the quality of life in Clayton. And so just to underscore. So anyway, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Um,
And just,
Go ahead.
just a good point that you bring up as it relates to the staff. Working with the staff's been great, very knowledgeable, very informative. They've helped us through this process. We definitely didn't do this on our own. So this has been a very good working and collaborative effort, working with the staff on this application and beyond the application. So it's important to point that out. We've appreciated that help and guidance.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, it's nice leadership really to find out these really important strategic things about our downtown. So it's good. If there is nothing further,
Mayor, if I may, I know in this particular case, the developer is asking for both readings in one night. You only have one meeting here in December, and I'd like to get
Yeah.
going right away. So I just wanted to point that out. And
yes. So are we closing this public hearing and opening a new one? Or the
no, you're only required one public hearing for
plat and
this. Public hearing is covering both. You'll need to
Okay.
pass two ordinances though.
that's why I
So
was asking.
either of those items could be discussed by the public at the time.
Okay, very good.
I don't know if any
So-
of the attendees have a hand up or not.
Okay, nobody has a
so.
hand up right now. So in that case, help me out. So instead of introducing the bill, would we like to, and instead of closing the public hearing, introducing this bill, we want to move right into the subdivision plat and discuss that? Or do you want to have the vote on
We
this?
actually wrapped it into the report. So you, at this time, if you'd like to close the public hearing for both of those items, you'll need to take off each ordinance separately.
Let me ask this, is there any discussion about the subdivision plat? Okay, so we can close the public hearing for this planned unit development and the subdivision plat. And we could take and introduce an introduction of the bill from Alderman Berkowitz.
I'd like to introduce bill number 7001, approving the rezoning and a planned unit development for 111 and 121 South Merrimack Avenue to be read for the first time by title only.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, Ms. City Attorney. Just by the way, do we have any changes to the ordinance based on the amendments we've been talking about here, or is it just the?
Yes, so on the, with respect to the first change, which is the affordable housing provision, that it shall not just be studios and that a variety of units shall be afforded, or it should be available as affordable housing. So there's going to be a couple of changes. The first one is to section 3 of the ordinance itself in the table of public benefits. And that is the second from the bottom under affordable housing. So that change will be made. And then also it is to section E3E of the PUD document, which is exhibit C to the ordinance. Affordable housing units must be located in different parts of the building and with varying unit sizes and number of bedrooms. And then in addition to section E3G of the PUD document, which again is exhibit C to the ordinance itself, we are going to provide additional language that clarifies the commercial tenant space shall not be occupied by a financial institution.
Okay, and so do we need to say we're introducing the ordinance as amended?
I don't think that it's been amended because we're doing that we did that prior to the introduction and the first reading.
Very good. Okay. I will get Robert's rules down in my lifetime. I don't know. Okay, so we've had it introduced and we've had a second. We have no discussion other than that.
I haven't read it yet.
City Attorney.
And Mr. Yeah, I just was gonna repeat what we already said, just to summarize. So now it's Ms. City Attorney.
Okay. An ordinance providing for the rezoning of certain property located at 111 and 121 South Merrimack Avenue to a planned unit development district to be known as the Shaw Planned Unit District, providing for the change in the zoning map of the city of Clayton, Missouri, approving a planned unit development for the subject property and other actions related thereto.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Alderman Berkowitz.
I move that the board give unanimous consent to consideration for adoption of Bill number 7001 on the day of its introduction.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the minutes reflect the board has given unanimous consent.
I'd like to introduce Bill number 7001, approving the rezoning and a planned unit development for 111 and 121 South Merrimack Avenue to be read for the second time by title only.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, the city attorney.
An ordinance providing for the rezoning of certain property located at 111 and 121 South Merrimack Avenue to a planned unit development district to be known as the Shaw Planned Unit District, providing for the change in the zoning map of the city of Clayton, Missouri, approving a planned unit development for the subject property and other actions related thereto.
Alderman Berkowitz,
Aye.
Alderwoman McAndrew,
Aye.
Alderwoman Buse,
Aye.
Alderwoman Patel,
Aye.
Alderman Fader,
Aye.
Alderman Hummel,
Aye.
Mayor Harris.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. With regard to the subdivision plat, you don't need to read anything. You already did that. So Alderman Berkowitz.
I'd like to introduce Bill number 7002, approving a subdivision plat for 111 and 121 South Merrimack Avenue to be read for the first time by title only.
Second.
Any discussion? The city attorney.
An ordinance providing for the approval of a plat to consolidate certain property known as 111 and 121 South Merrimack Avenue and a portion of a vacated alley in the city of Clayton, Missouri.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
I move that the board give unanimous consent to consideration for adoption of Bill number 7002 on the day of its introduction.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the minutes reflect the board's given unanimous consent.
I'd like to introduce Bill number 7002, approving a subdivision plat for 111 and 121 South Merrimack Avenue to be read for the second time by title only.
Second.
Any discussion? City attorney.
An ordinance providing for the approval of a plat to consolidate certain property known as 111 and 121 South Merrimack Avenue and a portion of a vacated alley in the city of Clayton, Missouri.
Alderman Berkowitz,
Aye.
Alderwoman McAndrew,
Aye.
Alderwoman Buse,
Aye.
Alderwoman Patel,
Aye.
Alderman Fader,
Aye.
Alderman Hummel,
Aye.
Mayor Harris.
Aye. Okay, congratulations. I forgot to mention that I like the name, the Shaw. That's cool. Like,
Thank you very much. I thought it was, tells everybody what it is and where it is, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Well-
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was
Did you
just
have
gonna
something
say,
else?
I was just gonna say, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And thanks for getting us on this agenda, and everybody just have a wonderful holiday season and Happy New Year.
And you
Yeah.
feel better. You feel better.
You too.
Feel better.
You too.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're gonna go into consent agenda. You can have a seat. I know we have the vacation of the alley still, but that's part of the city manager report, so. Okay. Consent agenda.
We have minutes on there and disposal of records are the only two items this evening.
Okay, any discussion about any of that? All right, Alderman Berkowitz.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion?
Alderman Berkowitz,
Aye.
Alderwoman McAndrew,
Aye.
Alderwoman Buse,
Aye.
Alderwoman Patel,
Aye.
Alderman Fader,
Aye.
Alderman Hummel,
Aye.
Mayor Harris.
Aye. Okay, bill number 7003, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, within the block bounded by Carondelet Avenue, Bonham Avenue, South Brentwood Boulevard, and South Merrimack Avenue, there are two public alleys. One alley runs east-west from South Brentwood Boulevard to South Merrimack Avenue, and the second alley runs north to south from Carondelet Avenue southward towards the east-west alley. The World Trade Development has now been approved for this block, and as a result, multiple parcels have been consolidated through approval of a consolidation plat by the city. Given this project, a portion of the east-west alley will no longer be necessary. Staff recommends that the eastern portion of the east-west alley be vacated. This portion lies between South Merrimack Avenue and the north-south alley and is shown as shaded on the attached Exhibit 1. It should be noted that city staff is recommending that the north-south alley be widened by 4 feet, and the developer has agreed to dedicate an additional 4 feet to accomplish that. Staff recommends approval of the ordinance vacating the portion of the alley.
Okay, very good. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Alderman Berkowitz? You're muted.
I am. Okay, I'd like to introduce Bill number 7003, approving the vacation of a public alley and approving conveyance of a portion of the vacated right-of-way, the ROW, to the adjoining property owner to be read for the first time by title only.
Second.
Any discussion? The city attorney.
An ordinance vacating a portion of a certain alley right-of-way which was previously dedicated to the city of Clayton and is not necessary for right-of-way or for travel by the public, and authorizing conveyance of a portion thereof to an adjoining property owner.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Alderman Berkowitz.
I'd like to introduce Bill number 7003, approving the vacation of a public alley and approving conveyance of a portion of the vacated right-of-way to the adjoining property owner to be read for the second time by title only.
Well, we have to do the unanimous consent one first.
Oh,
So introduce that one.
which one was that?
So, the board give unanimous consent to consideration for the adoption of bill number 7003 on the day of its introduction. So I just read it. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
That's correct, right? Yeah, okay, good.
Sorry,
let the
I got
minutes-
distracted. I apologize.
No, that's totally okay, but I thought we'd just keep moving. Let the minutes reflect the board is giving unanimous consent. And now, it's your turn to read this one.
Which one am I reading?
Second reading.
Okay, I
Second
got it.
reading, second reading, second
I got it.
reading,
I got it.
second reading, sorry.
I'd like to introduce Bill number 7003, approving the vacation of a public alley and approving conveyance of a portion of the vacated right-of-way to the adjoining property owner to be read for the second time by title only.
Second. Any discussion? City attorney.
An ordinance vacating a portion of a certain alley right-of-way which was previously dedicated to the city of Clayton and is not necessary for right-of-way or for travel by the public, and authorizing conveyance of a portion thereof to an adjoining property owner.
Alderman Berkowitz,
Aye.
Alderwoman McAndrew,
Aye.
Alderwoman Buse,
Aye.
Alderwoman Patel,
Aye.
Alderman Fader,
Aye.
Alderman Hummel,
Aye.
Mayor Harris.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, the construction parking management plan?
Yes, over the past few years, the city has been experiencing unprecedented development, especially in the more congested areas of the city. Heightened levels of construction are expected to continue for at least the next few years. The associated road closures and temporary elimination of on-street parking are straining the available convenient parking for retail, restaurants, and commercial businesses. The current parking circumstances are not sufficient to accommodate the needs of residents, businesses, and visitors. Staff believe it is necessary to implement a new construction parking policy and enforcement ordinance to ensure that those responsible for construction activity provide adequate parking for construction employees. Staff recommends implementation of a construction parking management plan or CPMP policy. The policy's highlights are as follows. First, projects with values of $2.5 million or more will be required to submit a plan for construction parking with either the first of a building, so the initial building permit or demolition permit. In addition, lesser value projects may be required to submit a plan with their permit applications based on area conditions as determined by the building official. Secondly, the policy holds the property owner and general contractor both accountable for CPMP development, implementation, and enforcement. The policy dictates that on-street parking is not acceptable as part of or in lieu of a CPMP. And finally, a tiered fine system is included to ensure compliance. Following a fourth violation, a stop work order can be issued for a project. Staff recommends that the Board of Aldermen approve the ordinance establishing a construction parking management plan policy.
Very
And
good.
Mr. Gary Carter is here this evening if you have any questions about the document.
Okay. I'll open the discussion. Let me just go around. Ira, any questions? Okay. Bridget,
No questions, Gary. Thank you for getting this going. It was definitely needed.
yes. Susan, anything? You guys, anything at all? Gary?
So I'm just wondering, in the enforcement section, I realize this is always a challenge, whether the fees or the penalties are sufficient to actually deter violations, because builders may find it's easier. It's actually more economical to blow off the penalties, pay them, than it is to comply with them. So, and I realize we have a potential for a stop work order, but I know there's situations where people who live nearby would say, well, I don't actually want to see them stopped. I just want them to do this thing properly. So I assume that what we've got here, you think is as workable as we're going to get to actually put some teeth into this.
Well, Alderman Fader, I agreed with you, and I had much, originally when I drafted the original policy, I had much higher rates than Kevin reminded me of Missouri law. So, but I think the most important piece is the potential of a stop work order. Regardless of any dollar amount for the penalties, it's really that if you want to get to a construction project, it's any delay. So to answer your question, that is the amount that our city attorney recommended.
Yeah. So the stop work order is really the
The
teeth.
hammer.
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions or discussion? Okay. Alderman Berkowitz.
I will introduce bill number 7004, approving a construction parking management plan policy to be read for the first time by title only.
Second.
Second, oh,
Any discussion? All right. Ms. City Attorney.
An ordinance amending chapter 350 of the Clayton City Code to require and enforce construction parking management plans for certain construction projects in the city.
All those in favor?
aye,
Any opposed? Okay.
I move that the board give unanimous consent to consideration for adoption of bill number 7004 on the day of its introduction.
Need a second?
second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let the minutes reflect the board has given unanimous consent.
I'll introduce bill number 7004, approving a construction parking management plan policy to be read for the second time by title only.
Any
Second.
discussion? Oh, sorry. Any discussion? Okay, the city attorney.
An ordinance amending chapter 350 of the Clayton City Code to require and enforce construction parking management plans for certain construction projects in the city.
Alderman Berkowitz,
aye,
Alderwoman McAndrew,
Aye.
Alderwoman Buse,
Aye.
Alderwoman Patel,
Aye.
Alderman Fader,
Aye.
Alderman Hummel,
Aye.
Mayor Harris.
Aye. Okay, the use and maintenance agreement with the library.
The City of Clayton is preparing to begin construction at Remembrance Park, located at 7811 Maryland Avenue. The city met with representatives from the St. Louis County Library District, which adjoins the park property to the west, to review the construction plan and agreed that Parks and Recreation staff and contractors would need to have access to their property to provide proper care and maintenance to the park that will adjoin the St. Louis County Library District's Mid-County branch property. To that end, the city would require that the St. Louis County Library District enter into a use and maintenance agreement to clarify responsibility for ongoing use and maintenance of the property. The attached agreement details the arrangements and identifies the limits of the park property that is covered by the agreement. Staff recommends that the Board of Aldermen approve the ordinance authorizing a use and maintenance agreement for the property located at 7821 Maryland Avenue, contiguous to Remembrance Park.
Very good. Any comments, questions? Okay, we can introduce this bill.
I'll introduce Bill number 7005, approving a use and maintenance agreement with St. Louis County Library District for the right-of-way adjacent to Remembrance Park to be read for the first time by title only.
Second.
Any discussion? The city attorney.
An ordinance providing for the execution of a use and maintenance agreement for right-of-way adjacent to Remembrance Park.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I move that the board give unanimous consent to consideration for adoption of Bill number 7005 on the day of its introduction.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Let the minutes reflect the board has given unanimous consent.
I'll introduce Bill number 7005, approving a use and maintenance agreement with St. Louis County Library District for the right-of-way adjacent to Remembrance Park to be read for the second time by title only.
Second.
Discussion? The city attorney.
An ordinance providing for the execution of a use and maintenance agreement for right-of-way adjacent to Remembrance Park.
Alderman Berkowitz,
Aye.
Alderwoman McAndrew,
Aye.
Alderwoman Buse,
Aye.
Alderwoman Patel,
Aye.
Alderman Fader,
Aye.
Alderman Hummel,
Aye.
Mayor Harris.
Aye. Okay, the use and maintenance agreement with the gathering.
All right, I'll save you all some time. This is much like the last one, but on the other side of the property. This is a use and maintenance agreement with the Gathering, which is located at 101 North Beamiston, and staff recommends approval.
Very good. Any discussion? Okay. We can introduce.
I'll introduce Bill number 7006, approving a use and maintenance agreement with the Gathering for the right-of-way adjacent to Remembrance Park to be read for the first time by title only.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, the city attorney.
An ordinance providing for the execution of a use and maintenance agreement for right-of-way adjacent to Remembrance Park.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll move that the board give unanimous consent to consideration for adoption of Bill number 7006 on the day of its introduction.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the minutes reflect the board has given unanimous consent.
I'll introduce Bill number 7006, approving a use and maintenance agreement with the Gathering for the right-of-way adjacent to Remembrance Park to be read for the second time by title only.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. City Attorney.
An ordinance providing for the execution of a use and maintenance agreement for right-of-way adjacent to Remembrance Park.
Alderman Berkowitz,
Aye.
Alderwoman McAndrew,
Aye.
Alderwoman Buse.
Aye.
Alderwoman Patel,
Aye.
Alderman Fader,
Aye.
Alderman Hummel,
Aye.
Mayor Harris.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, the Flock Group, Inc.
Since 2021, the city has contracted with Flock to provide license plate recognition or LPR camera technology to the city. The number of LPR cameras in the city has increased from 3 in 2021 to 11 in 2023, with a 12th camera on order. Many of the municipalities in St. Louis County also use Flock Safety LPR cameras. When the city initiated services with Flock Safety in 2021, contracts were renewed annually at a cost of $2,500 per camera. In October of 2023, the city was notified that Flock Safety would maintain the annual cost of $2,500 per camera if the city agreed to a 5-year contract. If the city continued the annual contract renewal program instead, the cost would increase to $3,000 per camera. By entering into the 5-year contract with Flock Safety, as opposed to the 1-year annual renewal program, the city will realize savings of $6,000 annually and $30,000 over the life of the contract. Staff recommend approval of the resolution authorizing execution of a 5-year contract with Flock Group Incorporated to provide access to Flock services. And Chief Mark Smith is here this evening if you have any questions about the network or the contract.
Hey. Hi, Chief.
Evening.
Anybody got questions or comments? Yep. Oh, Ira, no? Okay, go. I'll just go in order. Ira, anything?
No, not right now. None of
Okay.
something hits me.
Okay.
Chief, I just was wondering, I feel like these companies, things are constantly kind of changing.
Mhm.
If the company gets, and maybe this is a question for Stephanie too, if the company gets bought out or like if the technology really changes, will the contract kind of keep up with that, I guess,
Sure.
like cost wise, if the cameras, like the technology changes with.
Yeah, it
them?
mentions in the contract
Does it?
upgrades, but we've had it for over 2 years now. And they're constantly upgrading their software. So
Okay.
we're getting,
So that was just the software updates
Sure.
they talked about in the contract. Okay, okay. And I know you gave us a great presentation about this, but you really feel like, because it's not a cheap date with Flock. So
Right.
do you feel like it continues to provide good crime? It's a good crime deterrent and also just a good way to keep our communities safer.
Sure,
I
as I
guess?
mentioned, we get a lot of hits for stolen cars. And often we can't pursue those cars, but we can try to pull them over. They go elsewhere a lot of times. So we thwart a lot of crime with these flock cameras. I mean, we're getting hits for stolen cars daily. There seems to be a spike in the last couple of months on stolen cars. And as I mentioned before, we had a brief discussion about our unfortunate homicide on Wydown. The flock cameras actually, they provided us the leads we needed to identify the suspects and make the arrest.
Thank you.
Susan, anything?
Yeah, and just real quickly, it does seem the cameras are a great evolution and a great tool for law enforcement. The only caution I would have is just privacy concerns. And I'm hoping that this contract has been looked at and that whatever, I don't pretend to know, but whatever the best practices are with respect to contracting and protecting the information that's generated, I hope it's incorporated in the contract. So I don't know, has this been looked at by legal counsel or?
Mr. O'Keefe did that. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Great. Okay, that's it.
All right.
Thanks.
Over on this side, comments, questions? No, yes.
Chief, just curious, I know we've only been involved in this for a short time, but I'm wondering, have we experienced any vandalism or downtime with these cameras?
Oh, no, yeah, so there has been, one of the cameras, started, it wasn't producing good images and it was failing. And that's part of their contract. They came and replaced the equipment. And so right away, no vandalism yet.
Okay, if that's it, then we can introduce the resolution.
I'll move to approve resolution number 2023-36, a contract with Flock Group Incorporated for the license plate recognition services.
Second,
All those in favor?
I,
aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. I'm gonna suggest in the interest of time during the holiday week that we forego the roundtable, as much as I'm dying to know everything you guys did the last 2 weeks. And we are gonna go into closed session, so if there's nothing further here, let's go ahead and make the motion to go into closed.
Great. I move that the Board of Aldermen hold a closed meeting with a closed vote and record as authorized by section 610.021, parts 1, 2, and 3 of the revised statutes of Missouri relating to legal issues, real estate and/or personnel, negotiation of a contract pursuant to section 610.021, part 12, and/or proprietary information pursuant to section 610.021, part 15, and/or information related to public safety and security measures pursuant to section 610.021, 18 and 19 of the revised statutes of Missouri.
Second. Alderman Berkowitz,
Aye.
Alderwoman McAndrew,
Aye.
Alderwoman Buse,
Aye.
Alderwoman Patel,
Aye.
Alderman Fader, Alderman Hummel.
Aye.
Mayor Harris.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.